Well, Avon and crew are cruising along in their new ship, which is actually an old ship, but it's what they got. And it's been all modified by, Dorian Gray from the last episode. And nowhere near as impressive as the Liberator, but it does have a teleport in it. And fortunately, it's able to work thanks to Aurak. So it's really nice how things come together. Now, granted, they explained it all, so, give them that. It's more than you can say for current era shows and whatnot. But anyway, so there's this planet that has a very, Liberty-themed populace. They're not really fans of the Federation and whatnot, and yet they've fallen to it. The Federation seems to be regaining territory that it lost. And Avon's like, hey, what's this about? So we, hey, Dana and Taryn, why don't you guys go see what that's all about? But, they're practically a couple, aren't they? So anyway, they investigated, and it appears the Federation has come up with a brand new drug that pacifies people. Boy, like that would ever happen. Yeah. And so, this planet was once filled with a rebellious spirit, seems to have been quelled, but there's still some groups here and there still fighting back who just haven't been affected by this drug yet. And meanwhile, this is one of those interesting things where they give you an insight into the Federation's command structure and whatnot. And they've done this throughout the series. It's one of the high points of it, in my opinion, and how they're all backstabbing a-holes. There's no friends in the world of power. And they certainly capture that very well in this series. And boy, a lot of other shows could learn from that. But anyway, there's a mysterious commissioner who's pulling the strings here, and so on and so forth. But meanwhile, the rebel faction seems to have a helper, and it's one of their own. It's one of the Federation guys, and he tells them about the drug that's being used. And Dana and Tarrant join up with the group, and they find out about it. They seek out the guy who's developed it, who's been tortured to keep doing it. So, of course, he wants to actually help stop it, and so on and so forth. But as it turns out, the Federation guy is actually a double agent. This is all a setup for his own ends. And he's actually working for the mysterious Commissioner Sleer. And there's assassinations going on within the command structure and all this stuff. And surprise, surprise, the Commissioner Sleer is actually Servalan. Oh man, didn't see that coming, huh? She survived? Well, she made it to the Liberator's teleport, remember? So, somehow she got out of there, which is no surprise. Because, look, she's the main villain. Once she's gone, there's really no show left. But once Avon finds out, he's like, damn it. He was so happy with himself that at least he lost Liberator, but at least he thought he had finally gotten rid of her. But no, not quite. So, there is an antidote and to the drug, and it can protect you from it, and they discover that. And then everything is falling apart. So the title of the episode was Traitor, but of course that was actually the double agent. So a traitor of sorts to the guys he fooled, but he was out for his own as well. But Servalan always ends up in charge. So what are you gonna do? So that's mostly what the deal is here. They're once again engaging the Federation, and they're able to negate this particular avenue as they pursue to regain power simply by doping everybody. And so, we got to put a stop to that. So once again, Blake 7 is a thorn in the Federation's side. So next episode, continuing to deal with the loss of the Liberator, and they need a ship on par with that. And of course, the current one they have, however modified, just isn't quite there. But without that speed, they're at a great disadvantage. Because the ship needs fuel and they got to get it, but in order to go to the regions to get it, they got to go through heavily patrolled areas of space. And Avon comes up with a plan. He figures, hey, we'll use an asteroid as camouflage since it's on the pathway anyway. But they end up colliding with it. Look, it's dangerous out there. These things happen. And then to make matters worse, here comes a bunch of Federation ships on the way. And they're like, uh-oh. But then suddenly they all explode. And Avon's like, well, what the hell? How'd that happen? And so they investigated, and it turns out this much smaller ship takes them out. And they zoom in on it. And got to give it to them. The actual design, you don't see much of it in the show. The design of this ship is actually kind of cool looking. Wish they could have made more out of that, or they could have snatched it up and used it as a shuttle for their own. But nevertheless, they realize, hey, someone's got a much faster vehicle, and we want to know how this happened. Villa recognizes the markings on it of a gang of vicious, very savage, brutal guys who are only interested in thrills and speed and stuff like that. And they call themselves the Space Rats. Because, it's in the distant future, and by then all the good gang names have been taken. So they're really ridiculous looking guys with mohawks, and it looks like little sticker tattoos you could get out of a cereal box or whatever. But nevertheless, that's who they are. And they're so obsessed with speed, they manage to probably more or less capture this scientist who was done with the Federation but still wanted to explore an experimental star drive or space drive. Well, the title of the show, Star Drive, of a photon drive, utilizing light as the source of its power to push a ship through space at, Godspeed, really, on par with what the Liberator was capable of. So, of course, Avon's like, well, we got to get that. But, she's surrounded by the Space Rats, so they got to deal with him. Now, this, once again, they're having fights on, the quarries area where they film all this. Then, the Doctor Who would come in and film their battles with Daleks and stuff. And for the next planet, okay, quarry again. But anyway, it works all right. But the thing of it is, the Space Rats show up, and their terrain vehicles were just three-wheelers. So, you can go pretty fast on them, but these are guys who travel through space and stuff. But look, it's what they had. And why waste the good stuff on just some terrain material when they want to get into those spaceships and zip around between stars and stuff? So, So anyway, demonstrations of just how creepy and nasty the Space Rats are. One could even take that the chief or whatever has been somewhat quite abusive to the scientist here. But ultimately, Avon, of course, gets the drop on these guys and the gang, and they're able to get a hold of the prototype of the photon drive, and they take the doctor with them, the scientist, Dr. Paxton. Was it Paxton? Or yeah, I think it was. Anyway, she goes with him, and so they have a three-wheeler chase and to get back to Liberator. Scorpio. And as a go, I thought they would have had the drive, but then at the time when I first saw it, I just figured, oh, well, the Space Rats are going to shoot at them and end up killing the scientist because, how do you're not going to add her to the crew. And but no, that's not happening. They get on the ship, but then they're being pursued by the Space Rats, and they've got to try to hurry up and get the drive in place. And the doctor says, I know how to do that. But the problem is, once activated, you would have to do it manually. one of those scenarios, and she would not survive the blast of radiation that would happen when they jump in hyperspace or what have you. And well, that's exactly what happens, but Avon's like, yeah, well, shizniz happens. And that's it, because he's always got to show that what a cold bastard he is, but we know deep down there's a heart of gold beating in there. So little by little, they're able to restore, their supermobile here, with Scorpio now being more or less on par with Liberator's capabilities. And of course, they already had a huge advantage because they still had Aurak and hooked him up, and he was able to, perfect everything. So even if the Doctor had died, they probably could have had Aurak do it. But then again, who's going to volunteer to get fried? None of them would. And he's like, yeah, Doctor, you go do it. You're the one who made the damn thing. So, but anyway, all in all, 2 pretty good episodes. And one of the things about it is it seems rather simple. And at the time, I'm sure that was seen that way, because it's like, yeah, of course you would. But it's like the credibility lent to the plot, in that you explain your steps, you explain your motives and whatnot, and you're consistent within the characters as well, and it maintains that. And it's, granted, it's of its time, and people knew better then when it came to telling stories, but seeing it again in the current era, I can't stress it enough. It's like a breath of fresh air. It's just the care to it, even though they were lacking in material and money and budget and whatnot, and didn't really have things to make it look as good as other shows did. Space 1999 would put this to shame. Old Star Trek even would, into some scenes, and of course then Star Wars came along and all that. But nevertheless, none of it really mattered to me, and I'm rather easy on that stuff, even by today's standards. But nevertheless, the strong elements of it dominate the series, and makes it work. It's been a while. I had to take a break for other shows and whatnot, but I got back into Blake 7, and more and more, I think I like it better now than I did when I originally watched it, back in the 80s when I was a kid. So yes, for quite some time, Blake 7 was something I wished could get a reboot. I wished to be revisited and see that, and especially in the technology of today. And several shows recently, Andor, I saw as just that mood to it overall was more fitting to a Blake 7 world than a Star Wars one, But speaking of Star Wars, considering what's happened to that one and all the other franchises that were brought back in the current era, it's probably best to just leave Blake 7 alone. And it's unfortunate, because it really does have its own take on it. It's just trying to be Star Wars and Star Trek. They're in space and they have spaceships, but it is its own thing, and it deserves respect.